The morning my mother left for her destination wedding trip, she checked her suitcase 3 times, confirmed her flight itinerary on her phone, and asked the driver to wait an extra minute so she could reapply her lipstick in the hallway mirror. She did not check on me. I was 10 years old, standing on the 3rd step of the staircase in a t-shirt 2 sizes too big, watching her float through our foyer in a silk travel set that probably cost more than a month of groceries. Her fiancé Richard was already outside loading matching luggage into the black SUV. She was humming. She was actually humming the melody of the song she planned to walk down the aisle to, and she did not once turn her head to look at me. Before she walked out, my mother Victoria set 2 things on the marble kitchen island. One was a crumpled $20 bill and a 10. The other was a Target gift card in a chipped plastic sleeve, the kind you get as a party favor at a kid's birthday. $30 in cash, she said without meeting my eyes, and there's about 25 on the card. That should cover anything you need while Mommy and Richard are getting everything ready for the big day. Don't call unless it's a real emergency, sweetheart. This trip is very important to me. Then she blew a kiss in my general direction, adjusted the strap of her designer bag, and pulled the door closed behind her. The deadbolt turned with a soft mechanical click that sounded, to my 10-year-old ears, like the sound of a door locking from the outside. I stood at the bay window in the living room and watched the SUV disappear down our long tree-lined driveway. I counted to 300 the way I'd read about in a book because that's how long you're supposed to wait before believing something is real. At 300, they had not come back. At 600, I sat down on the cold hardwood floor and tried to understand what had just happened. We lived in a restored craftsman house on the outskirts of Asheville, North Carolina, in a neighborhood where every lawn was professionally landscaped and every mailbox matched. My mother had inherited the house from my grandmother 2 years earlier, around the same time she'd finalized her divorce from my father. Except my father wasn't the man she'd divorced. My father, she had told me when I was 6, had died in a car accident when I was still a baby. She had a black and white photo of a vague handsome stranger in a silver frame on the mantel, and every year on the anniversary she would dab at her eyes in front of guests and say what a tragedy it had been. The man she divorced was my stepfather Daniel, who had raised me until I was 8 and who she had driven out of our lives with a cruelty I was only beginning to understand in retrospect. Richard was the newest installment. A wealth manager from Charlotte with a golf tan and a laugh like a car alarm. They had been engaged for 4 months. The wedding, a 6-week production in Bali with 200 flown-in guests, was the most important event of my mother's life. She told anyone who would listen, including the checkout clerk at Whole Foods. I thought this arrangement was normal. I thought every 10-year-old was told that being quiet was the rent you paid for a beautiful house and a pretty mother. I did not yet understand that I was being warehoused, efficiently and with plausible deniability, for the next 6 weeks. The grocery store was a 1.5-mile walk from our house. I knew the way because I'd walked it dozens of times while my mother took phone calls or got her hair done. I put the $30 and the gift card in the front pocket of my jeans and I went that first afternoon because I understood already that I needed to ration. At the register, the cashier swiped the gift card and the little screen flashed a message I didn't understand. "Expired," she said, snapping her gum, looking past me to the next customer. "This was issued 3 years ago, honey. It's no good." I stood there with my face burning. I put back the carton of eggs and the apples. I kept a loaf of white bread, a jar of generic peanut butter, and a 6-pack of instant ramen. The total came to just over $11. I walked home carrying the paper bag against my chest, and I did not cry because there was no one in the house to cry to. 42 days, 6 weeks. I sat at the kitchen island with a calculator, and I did the math the way my 4th-grade teacher had taught me. $19 divided by 42 days, 45 cents a day. I wrote it on a sticky note and stuck it to the refrigerator door so I wouldn't forget, and then I cried for the first time, quietly, with my forehead against the cold stainless steel. On the 3rd day, I called my mother. I had to try 3 times before she picked up. In the background, I could hear wind and waves and a man laughing that was not Richard. "Mother," I said, "the gift card was expired and $30 isn't enough for 6 weeks. I need you to send more." She was silent for a long moment, and then she made a small sharp sound like a scoff. "Lily," she said, in the voice she used when I'd embarrassed her in front of company. "Do you have any idea how much stress I am under right now? I have a wedding to plan. I have 300 details to manage. I cannot be fielding calls about grocery money from a child who is old enough to figure it out. There are neighbors, there are churches. Use some initiative. I'll see you in 6 weeks." And she hung up. That night I opened my mother's laptop, which she had left on the kitchen counter, because she had a newer one for the trip. I knew her password because she used the same one for everything, the name of her first dog and the year she graduated high school. I opened her Instagram, which had 140,000 followers and which she called her second job, even though I had never once seen her do anything that looked like work. She had posted that morning a photo of her and Richard on a white sand beach with cocktails and coconut shells. The caption read, "Finally getting the child-free week I have been dreaming about for years. Love, laughter, and no little interruptions. Bali, you are healing me." I read it 3 times. I read it again. I closed the laptop, and I sat in the dark kitchen for a long time. And then I got up and I went to my bedroom and I pulled out the old tablet my stepfather Daniel had given me for my 7th birthday. The one my mother didn't know still worked. I opened the camera, I pressed record, and I held it up to my face. "Today is day 3, I said. "My mother is in Bali. The gift card she left me has been expired for 3 years. I have $18.75 left and 6 weeks to make it last. I just wanted someone to know." The public library in downtown Asheville was 4 miles from our house. On day 5 I walked there because I had learned from a cartoon that libraries had air conditioning and bathrooms and you didn't need money to be inside. I walked past the children's section and found a big leather armchair near the nonfiction shelves. And I read whatever I picked up, cookbooks and travel guides, and a history of Appalachian music. And at some point a woman in a cardigan with her reading glasses on a beaded chain came over and sat in the chair across from mine. Her name tag said, "Mrs. Chen, branch manager." She asked me if I was waiting for someone. I told her I was just reading. She asked if I was hungry. I don't know what my face did, but she stood up and said, "Come with me, please." And she walked me into the staff break room and she opened a small refrigerator and she pulled out a turkey sandwich cut into 4 triangles and a carton of milk. And she set them in front of me without asking a single question. I ate every bite. She watched me eat, and when I was done she said, very quietly, "Sweetheart, how long has it been since you had a real meal?" I was too tired to lie. I told her 5 days. I told her about the gift card and the $30 and the 6 weeks. I told her my mother was in Bali planning a wedding. I told her that the man who was not Richard was my mother's fiancé and that the wedding was in October and that I was not invited. Mrs. Belletmerand Chen did not react the way adults had reacted when I tried to hint at things in the past. She did not look uncomfortable. She did not ask me if I was exaggerating. She listened, she nodded, and then she said, "Lily, I believe you. I am going to help you, but I need you to do something for me first. I need you to keep eating and I need you to keep making records. Dates, amounts, photographs if you can. Adults who hurt children count on children not being believed. The only thing that cuts through that is evidence. Will you do that for me?" I nodded. She made me another sandwich to take home. She wrote her personal cell phone number on a library bookmark and told me to call her anytime, day or night, if I felt unsafe. I went home and I made my bed and I opened the tablet and I pressed record. "Today is day 5, I said. A librarian named Mrs. Chen gave me a sandwich. My mother has now posted from 3 different restaurants since she left. I took screenshots. I kept going. On day 9, I walked back to the library and Mrs. Chen introduced me to a woman named Samantha, a social worker from the county who just happened to be browsing the new releases, although I understood even then that nothing about their meeting was coincidence. Samantha sat on the floor of the children's section with me and asked me questions in a soft, even voice. She did not pressure me. She asked if I would be willing to show her the house. I said yes. She asked if I would be willing to show her the videos I had been making. I said yes. On day 10, Samantha came to the house with a county nurse and took photographs of the empty refrigerator. the empty pantry, the single package of ramen left on the counter. The nurse weighed me on a portable scale. I had lost 6 pounds. They filed the first of what would eventually be a significant stack of reports. Samantha asked me if there was any family member who might be able to help. I told her that my grandmother was dead and my aunt lived in Oregon, and that my father had died when I was a baby. Samantha tilted her head at me and asked gently, "Is that what your mother told you?" I said yes. And she wrote something down in her notebook, and she did not say anything more about it that day. 3 days later, Samantha came back to the house with a thick manila folder, and she sat down with me at the kitchen island and she said, "Lily, I need to show you something, and it may be a lot." She opened the folder. Inside were court documents, custody filings, letters, a photograph of a man who was not the man in the silver frame on the mantel. His name was Thomas Reeves. He lived in a town called Black Mountain, 20 miles from Asheville. He was a high school woodshop teacher. He was my father. He was not dead. He had not been dead since before I was born. He had spent the last 9 years trying to find me, because when I was a year old, my mother had told him she was taking me to visit her sister in Oregon, and she had simply never come back. And she had moved 3 times since, and she had changed my last name. And she had told him through her lawyer that if he came anywhere near us, she would file a restraining order and accuse him of things that would end his teaching career. He had not stopped looking. He had never stopped looking. He had never stopped looking. Samantha had found him on day 11 after she cross-referenced my birth certificate, which my mother had submitted for school enrollment with a small but revealing clerical discrepancy. I sat at the kitchen island and I looked at the photograph of the man who had my eyes. I looked at it for a long time. Then I opened the tablet and I pressed record. "Today is day 13, I said. "My father is alive. His name is Thomas. My mother lied to me for 10 years. I am going to meet him on Saturday." Samantha drove me to the diner in Black Mountain on day 15. Thomas was already there when we arrived, sitting in a booth by the window, and when he saw me walk in, he stood up too fast and knocked his coffee over, and then he started crying, right there in front of the waitress and a family of 5 in the next booth. And he just said my name over and over. "Lily, Lily." He did not try to hug me. He did not try to perform the moment. He just sat across from me in that booth, and he asked me what my favorite breakfast was, and when I said pancakes, he flagged down the waitress and ordered me a stack with extra butter and whipped cream. He asked me about school. He asked me what I liked to read. He told me that he had kept a bedroom ready for me in his small house for 9 years, with a growing collection of birthday presents in a closet, one for every year he had missed. I did not cry at the diner. I cried later, in Samantha's car on the drive home, in a way I had never cried before. The kind of crying that empties something out of you and leaves room for something better. The legal machine moved faster than I thought it could. Thomas filed for emergency custody on day 16. A judge granted a temporary order on day 18 based on the evidence Samantha had compiled and the 24 videos I had now recorded on the tablet. My mother's bank records were subpoenaed. She had spent, in the first 2.5 weeks of her Bali trip, just over $31,000. None of it had been transferred to me. The investigation uncovered something else, something Samantha had suspected from the start. The Target gift card had not been a careless mistake. My mother had purchased it online using a stolen discount code from a mommy blog 3 years earlier, and the card had technically never been funded. It had been a prop. A performance of motherhood for anyone who happened to see it on the counter. My mother had known. She had always known. On day 28, Samantha told me that my mother and Richard would be returning the following Saturday. The wedding had not yet happened. They were coming back to Asheville first for what Victoria had described on Instagram as a pre-wedding reception and dress showing, a 200-guest event at the Grove Park Inn, the fanciest hotel in western North Carolina, where my mother planned to preview her wedding gown and her new life for everyone she had ever wanted to impress. Samantha said the district attorney's office wanted to serve the custody papers and the neglect charges at a specific moment for strategic reasons, and she asked me if I would be willing to attend the event. I said yes. I said it without thinking. I had known, on some level since day 3, that this was how it had to end. Thomas took me to buy a dress the Thursday before the reception. A simple navy blue dress with small white flowers. He bought me shoes that actually fit. Because my mother had not bought me new shoes in 8 months and my feet had grown. He brushed my hair himself on Saturday morning, clumsily, with a lot of apologies, and then he drove me to the Grove Park Inn in his old pickup truck, and we waited in the parking lot with Samantha and 2 sheriff's deputies and a woman from the district attorney's office named Joanne. Inside the grand ballroom, 200 people were drinking champagne and eating past appetizers under a 30-foot ceiling. A string quartet was playing something my mother would have described as tasteful. A large screen at the front of the room was cycling through photographs from Bali. My mother in white linen. My mother on a yacht. My mother laughing with Richard on the beach. A banner above the screen read Victoria and Richard, October in Paradise. I could hear her voice from the hallway, the performative musical laugh she used for strangers, and something inside me went very still. Joanne nodded at the deputies and we walked in together. A small procession, me in the middle with Thomas's hand on my shoulder. My mother was standing near the bar holding court with a group of women I had never seen before. She looked up, and she saw me, and for one full second her face did not move at all. Then it rearranged itself into a smile and she took one step toward me, arms opening for a performance hug, and she said loudly for the room, "Oh my darling, you came to surprise Mommy." Samantha stepped forward. "Mom," she said, "we need to speak with you." Joanne produced the papers. The deputies moved into position near the doors. My mother smiled did not waver for a beat, and then it simply dissolved, like a photograph left out in the rain. The event coordinator, confused, had not cut the slideshow. The photographs kept cycling on the big screen behind my mother. Beach, cocktail, yacht. And then, suddenly, the slideshow ended, and the screen went black for half a second, and then it flickered, and then my face appeared on the 30-foot screen. 10 years old, pale, holding the tablet at arm's length in the kitchen of a house where my mother had left me to starve. "Today is day 5, my voice said, amplified through the ballroom sound system, because Joanne's tech specialist had arranged with the hotel's AV team that morning to cue my video at a specific signal. "My mother is in Bali. I have $18 left." The room went silent. 200 people in cocktail attire stood perfectly still and watched a 10-year-old girl on a big screen explain, in a calm, small voice, that she was being left to ration peanut butter sandwiches while her mother posted from rooftop restaurants. The video played for 4 minutes. No one moved. The string quartet had stopped playing. Richard had set down his glass and taken 2 steps away from my mother. My mother was saying, loudly, "This is a misunderstanding. This is an attack on my character. Someone call my attorney," but no one was looking at her. They were looking at the screen. They were looking at me, the real me, standing in the doorway next to my father. The deputies took my mother out through a side door. Richard left through a different door 5 minutes later, and I have not seen him since. My mother was charged with felony child neglect, child endangerment, fraud for the gift card scheme that turned out to have been one of many, and custodial interference for 9 years of lying to my father. She took a plea deal. She served 2 years in a state correctional facility and was sentenced to an additional 5 years of probation and 700 hours of community service, and a family court judge terminated her parental rights in a separate hearing that Thomas and I attended together. I wore the same navy blue dress. The judge, a woman in her 60s with gray hair cut short, looked at my mother and said in a voice that did not shake, that in 23 years on the bench she had rarely seen a case of such calculated cruelty dressed up as negligence. And she hoped that the time in custody would give my mother the opportunity to reflect on what she had chosen to trade for a performance. Thomas and I moved into his small house in Black Mountain a week later. He had indeed kept a bedroom ready. There was a quilt his grandmother had made on the bed, a stack of books on the nightstand he had been saving because he did not know what I would like and wanted to give me options, and in the closet, 9 wrapped presents. We opened one every week for 9 weeks, and then we stopped needing to. I am 17 now. I graduate next spring. I have been accepted early decision to a small liberal arts college in Virginia, where I plan to major in sociology and pre-law. My father comes to all of my cross-country meets and every single parent-teacher night, sometimes too early. standing in the hallway with a water bottle and a snack like he is afraid I will disappear if he is not there. I have never once minded. My mother writes me letters from a small rental apartment in a suburb of Raleigh, forwarded through an attorney who will not give her my address. She says she is different now. She says she has been in therapy. She says she understands what she did and that she is so proud of the young woman I am becoming, and then she acknowledges, to her credit, that she has no standing to be proud and that pride is something you earn through showing up. I have read every letter. I have not written back yet. I may not. The point is that the decision belongs to me, and it will never again belong to her, and that took me a long time to understand I was allowed to have. She left me with $30 and a gift card she knew was expired. She believed that shame and silence would be enough to keep me quiet for 6 weeks and for the rest of my life. She had built a whole architecture of lies over 10 years, and she believed that a child who had been trained to be small would never grow into a person who could speak. She was wrong about every part of it. Have you ever been taught, in 100 quiet ways, that your silence was the price of being loved? That making yourself small was the only way to be allowed at the table? That speaking up would cost you more than suffering ever could? I would like to know what you did with that, because some of us learned slowly and at real cost. That silence protects only the people who benefit from it, never the ones it is handed to. Never us. Never you.